Alrighty, so today we're going to be talking about IEE. So, for IEE, I have had a friend pestering me to make this video for some time. Um, and I will probably use her as an example because she's the most exposure I have to IEE. So, get ready for that. We have extroverted intuition first, introverted ethics second. So, with we're going to see NEFI. Now, first, before we talk about the base, we've got to distinguish between them. Okay, we have NE and NI. What's the difference between these two? Well, NE is about surveying options. It's about looking at potentials. It's about exploration, alternatives, and things of this nature. So with people who have really bad extrovert intuition, one thing you'll see them struggle to do is they have a hard time saying, well, they have a hard time saying, well, what is it? They basically take your words at face value. That's something you're likely to see with them. Whereas types with higher extrovert intuition are probably going to be like, well, this could mean any number of things, and there's going to be this like instant understanding that there could be so many alternatives, or that thing could mean so many different things. So that is the first thing to keep in mind. You're seeing that rather than taking perceptions in as they initially are, an extroverted intuitive type is saying, is there any possibility that my initial perception was wrong, right? And that could there be something else that this means? Now that is an example of lower, not as strong extrovert intuition, but when you get into like much stronger extrovert intuition, it's very much about like exploration of perspectives and things like that. So what I explain extrovert intuition is as abstract information moving in a divergent manner, saying these are all the different ways we can look at this. These are all the different possibilities, options, etc. Exploring those options and those facets. Whereas with introverted intuition, it's about condensing it down to a coherent vision, reducing all of these extroverted intuitive options down to the singular option, and that can be what's more important, depending on the type. It could be what's more important. It could be about what's more meaningful. It could be about like bringing all of those perspectives together. It can be any number of things, just depending on the type. So that's a basic introduction to extrovert intuition versus introverted intuition. So how does this apply to the IEE? Well, we're going to be seeing an IEE is so focused on extrovert intuition and that exploration of perspectives and ideas, etc., that it's going to be very pretty dismissive of introvert intuition and which ones are more significant. So obviously not to a degree where it becomes dangerous, but it is something they're not going to pay a lot of attention to, is what options are the most important, or things like that. And so for them, this is extrovert intuition with low dimensional TI. So the primary focus we're going to see with the IEE is that they have creative FI. So what does this mean? Well, introverted ethics is about one's fixed sentiment to an object or subject. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, I like to describe introverted ethics as a sense of polarity. Okay, polarity between things. So if you were to take a magnet or two magnets and you were to put the positive ends towards one another, there would be a resistance or a push against one another. Whereas if you flip one of them around, there's a attraction, and it's hard to resist that pull, right? And so you can consider introverted ethics to be understanding what things one is attracted to and repulsed by, right? So that's the primary thing. Whereas with extroverted ethics, it's not about being involved with the sense of polarity in the environment. So For someone like me who has introverted ethics in the demonstrated position, I get annoyed by introverted ethics. I'll be like if I see two people having some kind of disturbance with one another or this conflict, for someone like me, I'm always trying to alleviate it and make it like about an idea or a topic rather than like there being like a problem between the people. And so to me, it's almost like the atmosphere is really nice and it's calm and it's smooth. And then like if there's a conflict of introverted ethics nature, it's like a disturbance. It's like there's a disturbance in the force. Like this tension in the environment. And I'm like, oh, I've got to alleviate this tension. So that's kind of how it works for me. But for introverted ethics creative type, they're actually going to do pretty well at acting a certain way in the environment or affecting the emotional environment in such a way that it's going to get people to like them in a way. That's going to be something you'll see with this type. They'll know just how to say things and what to say, and that people will like them. And oftentimes, if they have someone specifically that they want to like them, they'll know how to present themselves, what things to kind of what kind of emotional nuances, how to present themselves emotionally in such a way that they can get that person interested in them and create that bond. So that's something interesting you'll see with the IEE. They do a pretty good job at both ethics, but their primary focus is on relations. Most people don't really care about their demonstrative. It's kind of an annoyance. So in the same way with with extroverted ethics, for them, they don't want to just they're not just going to be like, oh, well, I just want to contribute to the emotional environment just because. Like, that's something you'll see with FE demonstrative. It's almost like they shouldn't be obligated to like contribute in a positive way to the emotional environment. Especially if they don't like anybody there, it's almost like other people might say to them, hey, like even if you don't like them, like treat them well, like be nice to them, right? Which an IEE and an SE wouldn't have such a hard time doing. They can do that. But it's almost going to be an annoyance if it's expected of them when they really don't like someone or something, right? Because in a way, it's kind of betraying like how they feel towards that thing, and so that's pretty significant for that type. And again, one thing I want to point out is that because this type doesn't have introverted logic, the way that they know they like things isn't going to be through some understanding or some like consistent idea of like why they like a certain thing. This is someone who not only has this is in touch with the emotional environment, how and things of this nature, but also their specific connection, attraction, or repulsion to something. And so the way that they know themselves is by feeling. The way that they know themselves is by doing something, and if it feels like them, then it's them. Like that's something that they recognize, whereas they can very much have an idea of what things don't feel like them. And so when they're surveying their decisions, this is something that's going to be a big part of them. Like especially when it comes to their relationships with others, the question is, when I approach this thing, how do I survey that, or how do I what are my options? What decisions can I make? And then when I do, what's more like me, or what's the right charge to have towards this, right? So they're going to be surveying like how, like their motivations behind actions, and like I don't want to be doing something if my motivations are this, right? I want to do it for the right reasons. There's this focus on one's motive charge towards that that decision, and so for them, again, like I said, they're going to know themselves in almost in an energetic way. It's not going to be something that's structured or formulated or understood like in a logical sense. They may notice like, well, I get pulled, like I like these kinds of things. I end up doing these kinds of things a lot. Um, and when someone says something, the person may say something, and they'll know they don't like it because of their immediate reaction to it or their immediate charge to that thing. Um, and they may they may not have a really formulated understanding of why, or whether or not, like, why it makes sense that this is not okay, but they do know that that's how they feel towards it. And so for them, they'll have to find reasoning as to why that is, and they'll have a hard time being consistent. So if they're talking to somebody who uses introverted logic, they might be poking holes in what the person's saying, but it's because the person doesn't know it through some kind of logical understanding, but knows it through their connection to it. It knows it through how that thing affects them, or their relationship to that thing, or how they feel about it. And so again, this really ties in with how they form their connections and relationships. Like who they give their time to. It's very much like, how does this person make me feel, and how much, like, surveying their decisions towards them, and saying, like, well, what was the motivation, like what was this person's motive when they did these things. And so, like, it's going to be careful attention to that kind of thing. Now, another thing I want to point out, they have really weak introverted sensation. So um, you know I want to point this out while we're talking about relationships, because it kind of ties in here too. Introverted sensation is about homeostasis, is about how things affect other things in the environment. And of course, with these types, they're so scattered that they may have a hard time, like, bringing these things together, and like these different ideas and these different things. It may just create a lot of chaos in their life, rather than having that sense of, like, um, I don't want to say order, but that sense of, like, harmonic balance of all of these different things, right? And so for this type, they'll have a hard time, like, they'll have a hard time doing a like with their relational boundaries. This is a potential mistake that they'll make, is that they may not recognize as clearly, like, um when they should and when they should not, like, pull out of, like, a relationship, for example. um and that's just something that, like, it's something they want to give the person the benefit of the doubt. They want to give the person, like, um uh like, well, what if this person had, like, these motivations, or et cetera, et cetera. But there's that sense of weak introvert sensation is what is causing the problem of, like, well, I need to space this out in my life. This is where the boundary lies, where it infringes on me, right? And so that's going to be something that they'll have to pay a close attention to. It's something that they'll likely miss, and they'll want to keep exploring whether or not there's any possibilities or potentials there, um, rather than recognizing when it's crossed, like, a line, as far as how it's affecting them, how it's influencing them. And of course, introverted sensation is all about creating a space, or spacing things in such a way that things don't influence another, um, in a non-harmonious way. Like, like I've said in the past, introverted sensation types pay a lot of attention to how they walk through the room. Can they walk through are they going to walk through the room, like, essentially they don't want to affect things or disturb things from happening independently. So they may, like, take a path that sort of prevent, like almost take a path to where they don't affect something that's happening on its own. And so in the same way, you're going to see that with the relationships. Like, why is it that it's going to be this idea of, like, not recognizing when something's infringing on them, or when there's something's influencing them in a way where it's it's infringing on who they are or who they're meant to be. So that's going to be a point of contention for IEs because of that introverted sensation being suggestive. And we'll get into introverted sensation a little bit more in a minute. One more thing I want to go over is extroverted logic. So this is where I'm going to bring in my the example of my friend. So I have a friend who who's illustrated to me that IEs are really good at being practical and being like cost efficient, etc. Now, for someone like myself who's really bad at like TE and things of this nature, and like things like doing taxes and things like that, my friends offered to like help with my taxes or like take a cut from my from like doing that stuff, because that stuff stresses me out. Like all those like all that different like paperwork you have to do, and like the stuff that society is demanding from me is quite frustrating to deal with. And so for her, she was like, "Oh, well, if I can make 15%, then I'll help you out," you know. And so yeah, and so that, I mean, that works for me. But that's kind of an example. Like they're pretty good at those kinds of things, and they pay a lot of attention. Again, like I said before, to how much someone is feeding into them, and how much someone is giving them their time. It's an investment. A relationship is seen as an investment. Like, you're giving your time to me. So there's a careful measuring of that amount of attention that someone would give to not only their relationship but other things in their life. And so that's central. But my friend actually bought me a phone when I didn't have one, and one thing that she kept talking about when she bought it for me, which was really nice of her, but she kept talking about how, like, she wanted to know if I was gonna get the money's worth. Like, how long are you gonna use this? Like, are you just using it for a bit, or are you gonna get your full like money's worth, or And so she wanted to know if I was still using it, and if she, like, now that she'll see that I'm still using it today, that's gonna bring a smile to her face when she's watching this video, because she really wants to make sure that like her gift like was fully appreciated or like used. And that's a big part of the IEE. They're very focused on like they want something to like its full value to be recognized or used. And so that's essential to them. That's something that's important to them. And with TE mobilizing, they're going to be pretty good at getting things done, being efficient. It's going to be something that they pride themselves in. It's not going to be something that comes naturally, but it's going to be something they pride themselves in, and brings them great joy to help with those things. In fact, same friend helped me when we moved to this apartment. Helped me like organize a lot of my things. I'm a mess, so yeah. So like we like took out all the different boxes that I've been holding on to for like years, and just like threw away a lot of stuff, and yeah, like it was really helpful, and just helped me with like moving around my room and keeping everything like aesthetically pleasing and stuff like that. So and you can tell that when she does it, it's not just that she was doing it for a friend, but it was also, she was doing it because she genuinely enjoyed doing it, and genuinely enjoyed helping like me with that stuff. And then obviously like uh yeah, so that's, I mean, yeah, so contributing to this relationship in a sense. And then also just doing it because she prides herself in that sort of thing. So or enjoys it, or finds enjoyment in it. So and so IEEs, TE mobilizing can be really success oriented, and I mean that focused on efficiency. The problem is, they're not going to have as much of a focus on introverted logic, or having any sense of logical consistency. That's going to be something they struggle with. Introverted logic is going to be their pain. Being consistent, that's not something they're good at. They're good at situational things. They're good at what works in what situations, and finding the most efficient way of doing something. That's going to be something they can grow and get better at. But for introverted logic, it's not going to be this way. Remaining consistent, having like a set of principles or an understanding is going to be a very slow process for them, at least one that's at least a logically consistent understanding. So that is that is going to be a pain point for them. And so will the introverted sensation part that we talked about earlier about the relationships and that sense of boundaries. That's going to be something that's going to be a major pain point for them, more so probably than introverted logic. Most IEs are going to be like, oh my gosh, that get that logic, like that TI away from me. Because the thing is, TI it can be very detached, and for someone who has like this very emotional sense of like what they're attracted to and repulsed by, it's this spectrum of color and this, like, I think of it like auras, like auras, like you come into something, or you come into a situation or a person or whatever it may be, and in that moment you feel things are right. And that's kind of that's like how I know an IEE would know themselves, right? Is like they enter into a situation and they're like, this is so right. And so yeah, that's pretty central to them. But that introverted sensation is going to be a pain point, having that sense of like how far is too far, or like where that boundary lies between them, where people are negatively affecting them or negatively influencing them, etc. It's going to be a pain point, and it's going to be a point of maturity for an IEE to look at this potential relationship and kind of decide like, no, like that's okay. Like I think that this is the best thing for me right now. And turning away from things like that is going to be big for them, because if they see potential in someone, then it's like they're going to want to explore it. So that point of being like, well, is this really for me, or is this like, turning those kinds of things down is going to be significant. And I actually learned from the same IEE that that it's important to like give relationships like a full chance. Like you only have so much time to live, so like you should just, even if you don't know if it's going to work out, or if you don't know if it's like going to last forever, like you still have your whole life to live. So like jump into that relationship, like and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does, then you found something like great. The point is like you only have so much time to have those connections, and those connections are so important. So that was some IEE advice. And again, with extrovert intuition, you're going to be bringing all of these different ideas, objects, explorative kinds of things. And for an introverted sensation type, they're going to have to mitigate this, because the truth is, so I want you to think of it like this, right? Every object has a realm of influence, right? Whether that be like different corners of your life and different things that you're going to participate in, like if you have different kinds of events that you go to, whatever it may be, it takes up space in your life. And so for an introverted sensation type, they do such a good job of bringing all of these different parts of their life into a coherent harmonic balance. And with the IEE, they're going to be so exploratory. I mean, they'll probably go wanting to do all kinds of things, try out all these different things, do this, do that, very explorative types. And so they kind of need someone to rein that in and be like, okay, like this is where all of this comes together into a coherent balance. And obviously, I've even heard from an SLI point of view, a friend of mine, the SLI was saying, well, I sorry, I was just thinking about something. SLI was talking about how they kind of want they have this very sense of their this very rich sense of experience that they want to share with someone that can be, and a lot of times, a little bit disconnected. So that's something that you'll see with that dynamic. Bringing that in though is going to be big because obviously the IEE has no sense of like how all of these things are affecting one another, and so because of that, they may jump into a lot of things, and then it creates all this chaos in their life where it's like all these different things affecting one another. So the SI type is going to be really instrumental in bringing that together and creating a sense of balance, as well as maybe telling someone when like maybe they're being like maybe like with that extroverted logic just being like straightforward and blunt, like look, you're giving your time to this person, they're wasting your time. That could even be a point of help for the IEE because that SLI can kind of remind them like, hey, like this is not good for you, like this is impacting you, and I know that IEs are going to value that information. I found personally, at least with my friend especially, IEs have this very mature sense to them. Like this is something I found with the Delta NFs. Not all of them, but I've just found this like feeling of maturity, like and I'll be honest with you, I admire it, and I kind of wish I had some of that. Because I feel like my kind of approach is very different. But I do admire that sense of maturity and like and very careful decision making about how they approach people and even in their decisions, like how they feel about it and their motivations and what etc. So yeah, that's something I've noticed. So the last thing is extrovert sensation in the role position. This is gonna be good for like um, creating that oomph. You know, the thing is, SE and NE are opposites. So if you take like a SE type, for example, they want to narrow down the options. They're like, look, this is what I want to do, right? And so extrovert intuition poses a threat to that because the more options you have in front of you, you can't make a decision. And SE types want to push, they want to go, they want to act. And so when you're exploring all these different options, it's like you can't like it's harder to like actually come to a conclusion and to push past and decide. Um, and so for SE types, it can be frustrating for too many ideas. Whereas for NE types, it's the opposite, right? Like they're going to be pretty good at exploring their options and knowing what things are important. But then once they find what they think is the best option, they're going to have that SE to push and decide. So it might even be helpful for them to a degree to to push forward in that regard because they can be very exploratory. Again, they can get so caught up in exploring that maybe the decision making part can be difficult. So that SE may turn on for just a moment and be like, I have to pick one, right? And and so that'll be really instrumental in allowing them to push forward and just choose. Um, so yeah, that's big, pretty big part of the IEE, and I've seen IEEs. Uh, I've heard of IEEs doing really really well, and my friend does really well in terms of like success and like finances and stuff, and that's something that I think the extrovert sensation plays a role in because it's the role position. Um, but yeah, that mobilizing element of TE and that SE role can be helpful for that. So um, let me think. We talked about NE, we talked about NI, we talked about FE, FI, TE, TI, SC, SI. I guess what we can do really quickly, and I'm going to try to keep it quick, is talk about the Quadra values. So obviously with these types, we're going to be seeing NE and SI and TE and FI. So again, very much focused on their sense of relationship with others, how much you're feeding into someone, and how much that person's feeding into you. It's going to be about being practical, being efficient, not so much focus on like what makes logically consistent sense, but more so about what works. This is going to be the attitude, um, solutions that work, but also like feeding into relationships, and things like that. Establishing those bonds. And another aspect of them is going to be the extrovert intuition and introvert sensation, which is going to be about exploring many different alternatives and options, but bringing them together into a harmonic balance. Exploring that rich sensory experience is going to be part of that. And the thing is, with these types, they're going to be very they're going to want harmony. I mean, I mean, the thing is, with the SLI, they may have too much harmony, and they need an IEI to come over or sorry, IEE to come over and be like, check out all this stuff, like let's go try something, and that's going to be like, it might initially throw off the SLI, but that's going to be something that they probably need. They might be caught up in a bubble. So yeah, that's pretty significant, and so there is this aspect of bringing a harmony to their life, and I don't want to stereotype them, but I do. The image that comes to my mind is white picket fence. It's like it's this idea of like having that at the end of the day, like everything coming together, and there's this ideal like family, nice atmosphere, like calm environment kind of thing. Whereas like you see like strong SE types, they're like, get that away from me. Like I don't want the normal paradigm, I don't want the white picket fence. Like I want to make an impact on the world. Like I don't want to fall into the like idea or approach of life of like settling down and things like that. And whereas deltas are going to have that, I mean, that NESI, those NESI values are going to have that like wanting to have this like this idea of like settling down, basically. I mean, that's like the best way I know how to describe it. It's just, you think of the stereotypical like baked bread coming out of the oven, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but that's very much what they want. That's like what they desire, and especially for like, I mean, that's gonna be the orientation. Whereas, SE types are probably gonna be like not gonna be looking for that same kind of thing. More like impact and um, yeah, I don't know. It's not the same at all. Um, SEs really can be really very much about like rejecting the norms. Um, Whereas I think like that sense of home, that home quality, is something that SI types are gonna seek to create. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. We'll really quickly do SLI, or sorry, not SLI, LSE and EII. So I mean, in comparison to IEE, EII is going to be very um, EII is going to be much better about their relational boundaries, but less proficient in their sense of practicality. Um, they're going to have a good sense of like where the boundary exists between them and someone else. Yeah, whereas with the TE, that's going to be something they're going to need help with, and obviously the LSE is going to be able to provide that extroverted logic to them. And so yeah, I mean, the thing is, IEE and LSE are going to be activators, so they're going to be, that LSE is going to be providing the TE to the IEE, but the IE is going to be providing the NE to an LSE. So giving them those different options and possibilities that they can act on. So so yeah, that's pretty central as well. Yeah, so I think I covered that pretty well. So yeah, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys liked it. I hope my friend liked it. She's been bugging me about this forever. Um, but yeah, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, send this to all your IEE friends, and check out our Discord channel. I've got a Discord link down below. You guys can check that out. And if you want to get typed by me, I do sessions. So you can schedule a session with me, and that would be much appreciated. So yeah, alrighty. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.